Thank you very much, Elizabeth Shari. Well, with me now in the studio is Tobias Muse. He's completed one of the toughest races on Earth, the Marathon des Sables through the Sahara Desert, not just once, but twice. Also, Professor Greg Whyte, a former Olympian and now a sports coach, preparing athletes for competitions in hot environments. Well, we've seen what's been happening, haven't we, in Melbourne, how bad it is. But so, Tobias, just to start with you, what sort of temperatures were you running in, and what effect did it have on you?
The temperature in the Sahara is variable. Luckily, we go in April for that race, and it's not quite so bad. I mean, if you go at the height of the summer, it is ragingly hot. But the average is actually in about the 30s on a normal day, and then you'll get this crazy day where somehow it just knows it needs to be hot, and it will ramp it up to like 40 to 50 degrees. I think it got to 53 was the hottest.
And you were running in that?
Yeah.
Okay.
And with a rucksack.
With a rucksack, fine. So, and water, presumably, because hydration is key, isn't it?
Yeah, it's key. You get 9 litres a day. You refuel every 10k or so, and they basically make you carry that water. If you can't get rid of it. The fastest runners will not need quite as much as the ones who are out there for a long time.
Oh, I think we've got pictures of you there now. Actually, well, you all look remarkably comfortable, considering what you're going through. Professor Greg Whyte, what are the symptoms that athletes will feel if they are actually succumbing to heat exhaustion or stroke?
I mean, what we have is this range of symptoms. I mean, we all feel heat stress. So on those hot days in summer where heart rate's a little bit higher, breathing rate is up, we're sweating profusely, we just feel uncomfortable. That's at one end of the spectrum. What that can then turn into is what's called heat illness. And that's what we've seen a little bit of in Melbourne. And that's vomiting, diarrhea, fatigue, collapse. But tragically, once we move past that, if we move into the area of what's called heat stroke, then there is a real potential for death once we get to that sort of temperature.
So what do athletes need to do, apart from just saying, I'm not going on court?
I mean, the thing about athletes, and we see that with Tobias beautifully, is that they are acclimatised to these environments. I mean, tennis players actually follow the sun around the planet. They only play in really warm environments, apart from Wimbledon, of course. But so they're very well acclimatised. They've got a fantastic strategy of rehydration and refuelling. And add on top of that, with something like tennis, because it's intermittent, what they're doing is they're raising their core temperature during the high-intensity efforts. It then starts to fall, and it's quite what we call stochastic in its nature. What's much, much more difficult is actually what Tobias does, and that's these continual efforts over very long periods of time. But conditioning is really the key to that.
And Tobias, I mean, how important is humidity in all of this as well?
Really important. And I've done races in the jungle in the Amazon, and there it's 100% humidity, right down to like 0% humidity in the Sahara, and the difference is massive. Weirdly, it's much easier in the desert. Certainly for me, I found it a lot easier.
But have you really struggled? I mean, have you had moments where you just thought, obviously you need incredible stamina to do the marathon in the first place, but what about the physical state where you thought, do you know what, I could be in trouble here?
Well, actually, the only time I've really struggled was actually on the same day, the marathon stage, the last stage of the race, and that's when I hadn't really fully loaded up with carbohydrates the day before. Randomly, the temperatures went straight up, and I was quite happy to walk bits of it, and you just need to keep going, and you know that's the point. You just keep going. But I just drank more water, I slowed down, and that's what I did. I managed it.
Well done. I mean, Greg, I couldn't even drive there, let alone run it, I don't think. Greg, in terms of the international sort of laws and regulations that sporting bodies put on this, I mean, is there a temperature above which it's dangerous to play? I'm thinking about Qatar, for example, in the World Cup.
Absolutely. I mean, Qatar's a really good example, and what we see now is actually the relocation of Qatar into a later part of the season
where it's going to happen officially.
Yeah, I mean, but you know, I mean, to play in 50 degrees centigrade is almost ludicrous.
Well, even if it's air conditioned?
Well, I mean, can you air condition it? I think for me, actually, the greatest problem is that the players themselves will be acclimatised, be well prepared. It's actually the crowd, it's the audience, it's the officials. And invariably, my experience of preparing Olympic teams for hot environments tells me that it's the officials that are the ones that tend to fall over because they're not as well prepared, they're not as ready for the environment.
Well, not as fit either.
And certainly they're not as well conditioned.
No.
So it's a multifactorial problem, but there is no doubt about it that what we have is both at the low end, so in terms of cold, we don't tend to compete below minus 26 degrees centigrade. But at the top end, it's actually about heat and humidity. It's what's called the wet bulb globe temperature. That's what will dictate whether an organiser will run an event or not. And in Melbourne, they've decided that it is safe to run.
All right, Greg Whyte, Tobias Muse, thank you both very much. I don't know if you're thinking about running anywhere cold soon, eh?
I do, actually. I want to go to the Arctic.
OK, well, that's another discussion. Thank you very much indeed, both of you.